And now you can see why Mike doesn't work.
All right, everyone. I apologize in advance. I've lost my voice a little bit, but we'll just go ahead and get started now. We're going to start with the budget, and I'm going to introduce Klaus to take you through our budget. As you can probably see from the budget that is passed out, or if you squint really hard, you can see. I appreciate that the font is quite small. What you'll see is that we presented a 6-month budget, and the reason for that is that it'll become more self-evident after Mike talks for a bit, but we're anticipating a fair degree of change over the next 6 months, and because of that, we're just presenting a 6-month budget at the moment. Class will step up now and take you through that and explain what we have.
My conversation is going to be very short because, as I alluded to, there's a change in the works. What you have in front of you, and I know none of you have had a great deal of time to examine it and study it, but what you have is the 2017 actuals. That's money that's in the books, that's spent, that's earned, it's deposited. So this is for your information. You may have questions as to what do we spend this on or where did that money come from. You're entitled to those questions. Then in the next column, for 2017, you'll notice that for the full year, we only fell short of the budget of about $4,400. I think that's a real commendable mark to achieve because, well, we've weathered some storms last year. And then you see a 2018 column that says full year budget. We prepared that budget in anticipation of the lantern moving forward as we currently are, with no changes. This is what a 12-month budget would look like. Then I was asked by executive to change that to a 6-month budget because we were going to be going through this discussion that we're going to have this afternoon. The 6-month budget is not exactly 50% of the 12-month budget because there are some expenses that are fully paid till the end of 6 months and are not, they don't come into play again until after, say, the 1st of July. We've also decided that if we were to do a 12-month budget, we would look at paying principal again on our mortgage. But because we're looking only at a 6-month budget, we've decided to remove that principal payment from the 6-month budget. Other than that, there's not a whole lot that I want to more present on the discussions we're going to have following Mike's presentation. Could we wind up having a revised lantern, and that a revised lantern will require a revised budget. So this is basically a framework from which we want to start and move on from there. If you have questions on the budget as to the numbers, the arithmetic, I would entertain a few questions now, but if there are questions related to vision, I would ask that you hold off until after Michael's discussion later on. So are there any questions about the budget numbers arithmetic? Brian?
The bulletin that I have that was upstairs said that we were up by $2,000 last year. But this one says we were down by 4,400.
Okay, I haven't looked at the bulletin.
Yeah, so I just wondered if there was, like, is this like the actual, or is that?
Well, this
like
is what's in the
December?
books. This is what's in our accounting system.
Okay.
That the wizards who worked with, that Bobby and Andre put together, and Lee was involved in that, they put together. So, yes, I haven't looked at the bulletin numbers today to be able to comment on that. Anything else? Joy.
The Deacons Fund income actual for 2017 shows 0, 0, zeros, but we were taking Deacons offerings throughout 2017. Were those not listed as offerings specific to the Deacons Fund here? Were they included?
They
in
probably
the
show up under the, you can hold my feet to the fire on that, but under the benevolence, Deacons. Okay.
Where
It could have, that's the second line item under expenses. It says benevolence / diaconal other,
right?
okay? It could be that the income from the deacons fund was offset against the budgeted amounts. Okay? Now, you can hold my feet to the fire. I do believe we did have income from the deacons fund that should have been recorded. Okay. Maybe when I put this together, I didn't have that number yet. Okay.
That
I think it was 686. Is that number
For
right
the
now?
year?
For the year?
No, it was significantly more than that.
Okay.
That was how much was left
Oh, at the end of the
at
year?
the end of the
Okay.
year. Yeah,
Okay, maybe you can send me an email. And we can,
yeah, I can do that.
okay.
And then if you have any questions, you can ask Rose.
Okay. I'll pass on the monkey.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Then I want to take a moment then to introduce you to the newest lantern wizard. Our bookkeeper back in October left us, and we had to recruit another bookkeeper. Let me backtrack a moment. Lee Lumstaker, chair of admin, came to me and wanted to have coffee and dropped a bombshell on me and says that they wanted to ask me to take over the treasurer's position again as well as the bookkeeper position. And I said, I got out of that for a reason, 5 years, 6 years ago. And I said, well, to make a long story short, I said, I will do it on 2 conditions. You hire a bookkeeper immediately, and within 12 months you find another treasurer. So currently I'm filling the treasurer role, but the bookkeeper, we went out and we got a gem. Okay, through vis-a-vis, through Michael at his work and a colleague at work, we met a gentleman by the name of Andre Naiman. This is Andre. Stand up, Andre. Andre has a background in CPA?
CPA,
CPA, Certified.
Chartered Professional Accountant.
There you go. I know you. Anyway, Andre jumped into the role with both feet, and he has educated us on proper bookkeeping methods, and some things I couldn't. So it's for the accountants to figure out. So anyway, he has really jumped in. He's reorganizing our chart of accounts. He is giving us education on how we should record income and expenses, especially if we get income from this year, for an event next year. How do we track that financially? So he's the wizard on that. But Andrew's also taken on another role. December 24th, was it Joy? That Joy sent a nice little letter to executives saying, I'm out of here. I got another job. Okay, so you found another job. And okay, we need another Joy. Well, Joy's a pretty hard person to replace. She fills a lot of shoes. She does a tremendous amount of ministry. I think we can give her a real round of applause. But we needed another Joy. Well, the fellow who was taking over our books asked a number of questions about, well, who's taking over from Joy? What does that mean for me? Because Joy did some of the bookkeeping functions. And his questions led me to say, hey, Andre, do you want the job? Well, he thought about it maybe, 72 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah. He says, yeah. He says, I'd like to apply for that. So one thing led to another, and he was interviewed again by Lee, and by, I don't know who I'll talk to you. But anyway, there came to consensus that, hey, this might be a good fit. So Andre now is the new Joy. Okay, so now Andre,
Just less hair.
yeah, that's it. And if I encourage you to meet Andre, talk to him. The guy's a character, okay? He's got stories to tell. He sings in a quartet.
Barbershop quartet.
Barbershop quartet. Well, you know, so Andre is a very fascinating person to get to know. Okay, he's quite the gentleman at the front office here. He deals with emails, he deals with phone calls, and we've encouraged him. Andre, don't be afraid to say no at times when that's required. So anyway, that's Andre. Okay? And from here on in, my presentation is complete until after the Michael's discussion. And if you have questions about budgeting, visioning, feel free to talk about it. And Did you still want to do a straw vote on the budget later, or do you just want to?
We'll do that later.
Okay. So, that's it for me, unless you got any other questions for me.
Welcome to
Andre's speech. Tell us, how's it going?
That's good. I had some I had this one kind of like emergency request for a second 100 cup coffee maker from, I forget her name, one of the other churches, and after I got through on the phone talking to her, it's like I thought I was asking her a favor. And I told that to Klaus. He says, yeah, we've been trying to figure out a way to kind of segue kind of like how to win friends and influence people to her, but Then I had another emergency call like Friday night, because I was here on a Friday night, and they wanted Pastor Ed's home phone number, because they want to do like emergency prayer sessions, kind of like I just kind of thought that was weird. And that thanked me for not giving me his home phone number. So it's a really interesting position. So anyways, and I've met some of you already. I'm looking forward to meeting all of you actually. So anyways, yeah. So I really like this church, and it's got a lot of really great people, a lot of great heart. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Okay, Mike.
Howdy. Welcome to the big speech. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, and we are recording this. Johnny, that's all set up. John has it all set up. So, yeah, for folks who aren't here, we'll have the recording and stuff so they can reference that later, or for yourselves too, you can reference that later. So, with apologies, this part, me talking as a talking head, may take half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, hopefully not 45 minutes, but I think there's some stuff to walk through together, so get comfy. Part of the reason why we're doing this, so that everybody isn't looking over their shoulders, so that you can be comfy and you can sit and listen, and hopefully everybody can hear, and so we can sit in this together. So as exec contemplated what this chat would look like, we decided we need to spend the time required to bring you along the journey that we've already traveled, hence the half an hour, 45 minutes. If you're going to understand how exec arrived at the place that we did, we'd like you to have some of the same info that we had, right? Ed, Michelle, Ryan, and Jerry, that's what we had agreed. Everybody's good? So exec is all here. I think we're all here. Where's everybody hiding? There's Ed. Where's Michelle? Michelle's in the kitchen, maybe?
She's trying to run a kid home, she'll be right back.
Oh, okay. Okay, and Ryan and Jerry's here somewhere. Right there. Can't pick people out in the crowd. So, yeah, we can't share everything in our next little half hour, partly because of the time it's going to take, partly because some of what exec has gone through in the last few months is pretty intensely personal, and the personal stuff isn't really mine to share, and if and when those stories come out, it'll be the relevant individuals that can share those. I'm going to be reading from notes, hopefully not with my nose buried, but I have another 29 copies of those available here for you to take afterwards. I won't hand them out now because we'll read ahead to the answers at the end of the exam. But you're welcome to have those at the end. We want you to have those so you can look at them and think ahead and think about what we're going to chat about. For some of you here today too, it's possible that this discussion stirs up some strong emotions. I think we've got some very hopeful and awesome God-sized stuff to talk about, but that isn't to say it might not be emotional. You have my permission to take a moment and step out and have a moment. And in the unlikely event, extremely unlikely event, that this space gets a little emotional, we may take a moment together here as well. So maybe before we jump in any further, I'll just do a real quick prayer, and then we'll talk some more. Father God, I thank you so much that you've brought us here to this time and this place, that we can be together as your body, we can be together as friends and family, chasing you fervently wanting to experience and encounter you, God. I pray that this morning or this afternoon would be an encounter with you. Amen. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. The very origin of the lantern, and some of you may have already heard this speech or a version of this over the years, and some of you were actually present at the origins of the lantern. I actually was one of those. I think how we started is important, so we'll start there real quick. So my personal start with the lantern was part of a process called Scenarios of Choice. That was happening at First Christian Reformed Church, now known as River Park Christian Reformed Church. Scenarios of Choice was a CRC-led program to help churches to figure stuff out. And the thing that First Church needed to figure out at the time was what to do with the fact that we were bursting at the seams. The church was full, and it was an awesome problem, but a problem that had to be solved. So as we went through that process, we ultimately came out with two solutions. One was to plant what we later called the lantern, and another solution was to sell the First Christian Reformed Church building and to build or buy something bigger, which is another thing that's happened, and that's where they are in their new location. So at first, CRC, even before the lantern was formed and had its name, we understood that the opportunity we had with starting this church was to gather a group that was passionate and laser focused around a vision. The act of signing up for the lantern acknowledged that not everybody at First CRC was called to participate in this little church plant, and those that didn't join us, they encouraged us and blessed us and prayed for us, and it was a real building time for the group. So after calling Ed and Michelle, the lantern started out by canceling Sunday morning services. We asked ourselves, and I think you've heard this one over the years, is what does church look like without Sunday morning? Without having to feed a never-ending call for volunteers? What does it look like if we, these longtime churchgoers like myself, expand our circle beyond the comfortable walls of the church building and did something a little different? So we started out with this vision to reach pre-Christians, non-Christians, I guess there's lots of labels we call those folks by, folks that don't yet know Christ, let's go there, to reach those folks with a community focus, to be missionaries in our community and in our city. And we've always wrestled as the lantern with what does that mean to be a community church. At the very beginning, and some folks like myself chose to move to Inglewood. That's what being part of community church meant to me and my family. Others visited Inglewood midweek weekends to invest in the community. I remember there were a number of folks that would make breakfast at the Colonel Walker School or the Bedoeast Aboriginal School that's run out of that. So lots of amazing things have happened over our 15-year history, and lots of people have journeyed with us, and we've invited those, which is a lot of you, to invest, to volunteer, to bless us with your gifts. And over time, many programs and ministries have been organically added to the lantern. We formally organized, I guess that's a thing that happens in First Christian Reformed Church denomination. You go from plant to we formally organized, and we were formally established. And as we continued to grow and mature, folks joined us from many different walks and added ministries and programs. And what happened organically is our original laser-focused vision starts to become more of a floodlight. And the diameter of that beam, as it expands, as the breadth of our audience and as our recipients and as our vision widens. And the effort required to maintain the intensity, milking my analogy, to maintain the intensity of that floodlight has gone up. And I think a lot of us have felt that as we've been challenged to maintain the intensity of our beam as we've widened it. But jumping forward to present day. So some of you may not feel that there's any issues with the lantern. It's awesome. And others perceive a whole host of challenges. Really, where Exec has landed is at the end of the day, we know for certain that when a vine is left to grow wild, that it's untended and unpruned, and that it can bear little fruit. And all the energy goes out into sending out new stems and and new branches and new leaves. There's in the Bible, Christ refers to our personal growth with a similar vine analogy in John 15, where it says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, and I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself, it must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. So the lantern's a vine into which we've all invested a tremendous amount of time, energy, and even money. And the lantern has produced a lot of stems and branches and leaves, and definitely its fair share of fruit. But Exec has recognized that it is time for some pruning at the lantern, that the extremely difficult part of recognizing that is knowing exactly what parts to prune. Taking this and bring it back to this. So for those answers, we've trusted God's direction, and I'm hoping that you can trust Exec. So be warned, I guess, if the vine has been left untended for a long period of time, when it is finally pruned, the immediate results can look nasty, messy, and a little overzealous. So it's something we have to be wary of. So since I joined Exec in January 2017, so just over a year ago, Exec has wrestled with many topics. We actually decided to ramp up our meeting frequency in June from the traditional monthly meetings to bi-weekly, to add even more time for prayer and for discussion and for this wrestling. Topics we've wrestled with include what do we do with mobile feet? Or a number of people have left the lantern. Do we know why? Is it us? How do we breathe new life into Sunday mornings, or is that needed? Is that something you can talk about? What do we do to increase discipleship and spiritual nurturing? We talked a bunch about, do we have a volunteer burnout issue? What can we do about that? We've talked a lot about, should we be worried about finances, about tithing, about Sunday morning attendance? Or how do we get Lanternites more engaged with the community of England? So, in addition to these wrestlings we've had over the past year, many of you have come forward to Ryan and Jerry and I with concerns and questions. And as part of these discussions, we've also actively solicited some exit interview, or what you call pre-exit interview type feedback. So Ryan, Jerry, and I saw the lantern continuing to do the same things, with many dissatisfied with the outcome, but we were unsure as to how to change the ship's direction. So many believed they'd made their concerns and feedback known to Ed and Michelle, and previous exec members, but saw no changes or actions as a result. We believe that the big topics that already, the three of us believe that the big topics, had already been discussed at exec. But we weren't satisfied that we'd done all we could. We were afraid, I was afraid, that if we didn't take a significantly different approach to addressing the various concerns, that there's a high risk that the lantern could come to a premature end. To us, to me, status quo didn't really feel like an option. Fear I have is that it might take only the departure of one or two families to bring volunteer levels to below the minimum required to sustain their ministries. Would this start a domino effect of departures? Or I was afraid, how on the edge are we with our finances? If the one or two families that depart are significant financial supporters, how long would it take before the bank account hit zero? And don't forget, our mortgage principal payments are temporary, are still on hold. We are living beyond our means from that perspective. So, I'll admit that without first discussing this with Ed and Michelle with the remainder of exec, that I reached out within the CRC to see if there was advice or resources on how to proceed. And I want to be clear, not discussing this move with Ed and Michelle, with the entirety of exec, was a mistake that has hurt Ed and Michelle. And I want to ensure it's acknowledged here. And whatever we do going forward, we do with each other, not to each other. Today's about being with each other. So after making inquiries, the extremely poorly named church visitor was offered. This is a real thing. Within the Christian Reformed Church, we have something called a church visitor. The church visitor it's a program within the CRC where every church has another church pastor that's assigned as your oversight or your connection pastor. That pastor prays for you and connects with you and it is your sort of your connection, your first connection. So I found out that we had this program. I found out who this person was. So Ryan, Jerry, and I met with our visitor, and we discussed the situation as we understood it and discussed our concerns. After some good long chat, he challenged us as if we'd ever spoken completely and clearly to Ed and Michelle about our concerns, as well as the concerns that we were carrying from the congregation. And we felt we probably had, maybe had, but really, definitely, to err on the side of caution, we felt it important to say, okay, let's bring the fullness of this set of concerns and this conversation to Ed and Michelle. So that was the fateful November 23rd exec meeting, where the 5 of us sat down. The church visitor wasn't present there. So I'm not going to disclose now what all of the concerns are. I'll give some of them. Some of those concerns are intensely personal between select congregants and Ed and Michelle. And Ed and Michelle are actively taking steps to address and repair and repent with congregants wherever possible. And Ed, I'm not putting words in your mouth, I think, when I say this, that you invite people to approach you. I recognize, and I've heard from a few of you, that there is a, shall we call it a power variance between congregants and pastor, and for some of you that may make approaching or confronting your pastors difficult. I don't want that to be the case. Ed and Michelle really don't want that to be the case. So Ryan, Jerry, and I are definitely willing to help facilitate those discussions, to be present for them, to make sure that there's understanding. However, we will not be intermediaries. We're not going to pass notes. So if you do want to step forward with that, I'm going to pass your notes for you. Much easier when you're playing a guitar. So some of the feedback we gave to Ed and Michelle on November 23rd. Some congregants feel abandoned in that they feel Ed and Michelle spend a disproportionate amount of time in extra church and outside church community development in Inglewood. Some ministries feel unsupported due to Ed and Michelle's unavailability. That can be difficult to get feedback and support. They also feel initial enthusiasm and support from Ed and Michelle for new ministries sometimes wanes. Some folks have asked, is Ed spending too much time in securing and managing rentals? Some folks have expressed concern at the Lantern's doctrinal stance on the LGBTQ+. That issue is unclear within the Lantern. And there's a number of other things that we talked about. We've met now multiple times since that November 23rd meeting to try to figure out what are we going to do now? What's our path forward look like? Exec invited a third party into the meetings, wanting to make sure that we had some transparency and some accountability. The person we invited was Lane. So Lane is not so much a member of exec, but he's attending our meetings to challenge us and make sure it's not a bunch of groupthink. And so that's been a great addition, Lane. I really appreciate your investment there. So again, we'll go back to this. It's important to note and acknowledge that Ed and Michelle received hurts from Ryan, Jerry, and I through this process, that the feedback provided on November 23rd was surprising. So the counsel we got from our church visitor was wise. And I personally realized, and I'm going to challenge all y'all with this, that I could have spoken much more plainly about my concerns at exec meetings and directly to Ed and Michelle or directly. So I want to challenge you as we go forward as a group that let's speak plainly. And if we're concerned with somebody, let's bring that to our brother. So I'm about to talk about 4 vision options for the lantern. But before I do that, I just want to be clear in what everybody's role is here today. As you're aware, there is no formal lantern membership. So having a democratic vote to decide path forward isn't really an option. I guess if I was to editorialize, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure democratic vote is entirely biblical, but that's maybe another topic for another day. We don't get to debate that. The structure of the lantern's governance has exec as the God-ordained, picked out of a hat, leaders of this little gathering. Therefore, exec is ultimately making this decision. We've accepted that and we own that responsibility. However, exec recognizes that we are human and that we are fallible. So what we want to do is convey our intended thoughts and path forward, our recommendations. What we want from you then is your prayer and your feedback. However, I don't want your feedback in today's meeting, sorry. It's because much of the feedback you would give today is a reaction to the news and is not going to be a prayerfully considered response to exec's recommendation. It's human nature, it's not a judgment of lanternites, it's not a judgment of us. So I want to give you this space. And I want you to think about, just because you may not personally see yourself in the path forward for the lantern, doesn't mean it's not God's intended mission and purpose for the lantern. And just because you may not feel comfortable with or completely understand the long-term execution of exec's recommendation, doesn't mean that you're not supposed to be part of it. So once I'm done my little speech, you're invited to, we want you to ask questions for clarification. I'd be very happy to entertain those and spell out things that weren't clear in my pages of notes. And I recognize that some of you may want to give feedback, but let's hold on to that. Let's pray about it. Let's think about it. So over the coming weeks, approach any of the 5 members of exec, plus me, the unofficial 6th, with your thoughts and feedback, verbally, or you can send your thoughts to lanternexecutive@gmail.com, our exec email address. And then in 1 month, on March 11th, we're going to have another salon. And unless your feedback has caused exec to revisit and revise our recommendation, that March 11th salon is going to ask you to commit to exec's recommended path forward. And if exec is going to revise the path forward, you're going to know that before March 11th. That's not going to be sort of a big surprise, big unveil day. We're going to journey together between now and then. And at this salon, we're going to repeat the event that founded the lantern. We'll ask anyone that will commit to being part of the Go Forward Lantern to sign up on a big piece of paper. It'll be awesome. Maybe a small group, it may be a huge group. God is going to move amongst us as He moves. In either case, being part of this group means you're going to be part of an amazing God-directed journey. It's going to be unclear as to where this journey is going to go, as most God-led journeys are. But if you're called to this journey, know that you're being called to an extremely important, everlastingly important kingdom-building event, both within you personally and in this world. And then 1 week after the March 11th salon, and this will be hard. On March 18th, we're going to have a blessing service, a going away party. For any of you that may choose not to sign up, it's going to be a hard service because we love you so much. But we're going to do our best to ensure you find a new home. That doesn't mean on March 18th you're kicked out. Continue to journey, continue to be part of the lantern, but know that the people that are saying, yeah, I'm part of Lantern 2.0, whatever that's going to look like here, those are the ones who are going to be deciding. And if you want to continue the journey, or if you're not decided yet, then do that too. Okay? So that's the plan. We've got today, 1 month, March 11th, will be big celebration, sign-up, salon, and service and stuff. And then a week after that, we're going to have a going-away party. Feels like it might be happening fast. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to do something. Okay, so back to issues and options. So as I mentioned previously, there's kind of, did I mention this? I think I mentioned this previously. The concerns are generally in one of 2 categories. There's relational with Ed and Michelle, and Lantern Vision. They're not completely separate, let's be honest, but they are kind of two buckets of things. So Exec believes that the relational issues would have been we would be in a much better position with those if we had a clearer organizational structure within our church, that if we have defined and documented and continually updated roles and responsibilities and accountabilities with pastors, with exec, with the various ministry leaders, that we have clear boundaries between the mandates of the pastors and the mandates of the various volunteer leaders. If we have an onboarding process for exec. Exec believes if we spoke plainly about this stuff, if we had some of this written down, it would have gotten us to a better place than we are. So exec recommends that we implement those aforementioned items going forward. It's also really good to note that in the meeting that Ryan, Jerry, and I had with the church visitor, that this is actually something that they had pointed out at that time too. So yeah, exec is in agreement, and this is the way that we should go forward there. So that's the relational side. And as far as vision goes, exec has identified 4 primary options. Option 1, cease Lantern operations. Option 2 is to dismiss Ed and Michelle and to recruit new pastors. Option 3 is to merge with another congregation. And option 4 is to refocus the Lantern's vision and relaunch. Now, for those of you who are familiar with lists, you probably know where this is going. But journey with me as I go through the 4 options. So option 1 is to cease Lantern operations. So this is very similar to status quo or do nothing option. So I'll kind of lump those two together. I'm going to go with there doesn't seem to be any positive outcomes to this option. If we do this, if we cease operations, all Sunday morning attendees need to find another church, or actually stop going to church altogether. All Lantern tenants are evicted, so the circus, the kinder house, the apartment rental, all of that ends. The communities of Inglewood and Ramsey will be deprived of their chaplains, as Ed and Michelle lose their primary source of income and need to find something else. And the investment of time, energy, money that all of us Lantern have invested over, for some of you, many, many years, all of that evaporates. The only positive, I guess, with that option is we don't need to talk about this anymore. That's not really a positive. So the key concern that exec has with this option is the folks that don't get a say in the matter are the ones that are the most hurt by folding. Sunday morning attendees, us here, would get a say in the matter, but we're also in a position to find another church home. Our tenants, Inglewoodians, Ramseyans, get no say in the matter, yet those folks earnestly need God. They need the services the Lantern can provide, food, shelter, unconditional love, and who better to meet those needs than Ed and Michelle and all of us here at the Lantern. So exactly, that's we don't recommend going on that path. Option 2, dismiss Ed and Michelle and recruit new pastors. So if I understand what this option means, this option says that us Lanternites want to continue to meet in the same place with the same Sunday morning crowd, but under a new vision and new leadership. We acknowledge that Ed and Michelle have gifts and passions for community building, and a 15-year investment in the community and the culture and the organizations of Inglewood and Ramsey, that isn't easy to discard. I know it would take many years of investment from a new pastor or pastors if we want to replicate that position, that vision. If we don't want to replicate the local community nature of this vision, the missions-focused vision of the Lantern, then this option does make a lot of sense. I'll be honest, personally, and maybe this is Mike Fear speaking, so I'll acknowledge that, but it's extremely unlikely that we'd find another pastor with a similar vision, similar gifts to Ed and Michelle. I find it hard to believe we pursue this option intending to preserve our local community missions-focused vision. if we do elect to try, it's likely it will take a while to find the right pastor, and that the volunteer investment required from all of us during that time is definitely going to increase significantly. If you're stretched by your commitments to Lantern already, just wait to see what that's going to look like. I guess another thing I want to note though, it's interesting that Kensington Commons, another church, has just recently launched in Inglewood, currently set up a community center. If I understand Kensington Commons correctly, they don't intend to have sort of a local to Inglewood missions focused type vision. They do have great programs and great worship and great preaching. So unless you're dogmatic about CRC theology, which I'm going to say oddly enough the Lantern isn't, so I guess you're not. Unless you're dogmatic about CRC theology, then why discard the tops and the Lantern's 15-year investment to simply recreate what Kensington Commons already provides? Should churches compete? Wouldn't it be better that the Lantern would complement Kensington Commons as opposed to compete head to head? So without going down the rabbit trail further on that one, on option 2, recruiting new pastors isn't recommended an option. So option 3, merge with another congregation. This is a really interesting one. Exec was actually approached by another church outside of the CRC denomination over the last year, looking for some kind of merger. So it forced us to have a talk about what that looked like. What we've come to understand through that is the denominational divisions between churches make merge easy to say, but almost impossible to do. As such, the only option if we're going to merge is to merge with another Christian Reformed church. So that would be River Park, CRC, or our first church, the church that initially launched us. The recently merged Hillside New Hope, CRC, or Maranatha, CRC, or Emmanuel, CRC. So if we're going to successfully merge without losing who we are, we need to merge with a church that has a similar vision and similar demographics. And of course, we don't want them to lose who they are either. That wouldn't be fair. So that means, if you know these churches, the only option from that bunch of churches is probably the recently merged Hillside New Hope CRC. However, those guys are still near the beginning of their new journey, and they're working to create their new identity, their new vision, their new structure, and all that stuff. So our merger with them would only destabilize them further. In a different time, in a different place, that might be an option, but unfortunately today it's not. So Exec doesn't recommend merging with another congregation. So we come to, inevitably, option 4, refocus the Lantern's vision, relaunch as Lantern 2.0. I know that we'll call it that long term, but we'll call it Lantern 2.0 for now. So as you may have guessed, this is Exec's recommended path forward. This is what we believe God has called the Lantern to do. And what God has equipped the Lantern to do at this time in this place. With our unique mix of 2 very non-traditional pastors, you eclectic lot of non-dogmatic, passionate Christ followers, a 100-year-old church planted in the middle of the very uncommon communities of Inglewood and Ramsey. Our refocus is to narrow down to a missional/incarnational vision. Basically, back to Lantern Day Zero or something like that. So the success of a missional or incarnational vision is measured by the transformation of, in our case, the Inglewood and Ramsey community. Success will be measured in our impact on the community. Will they miss us if we're gone? We're not looking at the typical success measures of numbers of conversions, numbers of Sunday morning attendees, numbers of baptism, numbers of members, stuff like that. That missional incarnational model asks, what behaviors from us will bring about the kind of things that God dreams of for His community? What do we need to do to create meaningful connections between Christ followers and the Inglewood and Ramsey image bearers, pre-Christians, not yet Christians? So the invitation to check out the gospel is not goal, of a missional, incarnational church, but it's definitely part of it. Because the reason for relationships between Lanternites and the community be to transform the community together. The relationships have to get deep in this kind of church model, and it takes time, 15 years plus. And they're done for the sake of relationships, because those relationships fit with God's shalom dreams for His world. Sometimes God does use these relationships to invite people into a deeper and more personal relationship with Him. The model doesn't emphasize a cross-the-line type conversion, but a life by a million little conversions to live more congruently with what it means to be truly human. Relationships between Lanternites in this model are also critically important as our spiritual growth and development, but how that growth and development happens might not look like a typical church. So much of what we do at the Lantern right now is around supporting an if you build it, they will come type church. We've decided, rightfully so, that we need to have programs, and excellent programs, run within and run by the church that support everyone that comes here. Supporting all of these programs asks for a large amount of volunteer resources and requires you to spend your free time doing the business of church as opposed to actually rubbing shoulders with the unchurched. But do these programs actually bring in more pre-churched people? Do they actually extend the reach of the gospel? So as much as I guess I presented some of an imperfect vision of the why of this option, there's no way I can present the how. What exactly are we going to be doing differently in Lantern 2.0? Will we have Sunday school or tween or teen programs or worship teams or an admin committee or a belong committee or deacons or prayer ministry or women's ministry or men's ministry? I expect there's likely to be still some sort of regular weekly gathering service, but exactly when, where, and what it looks like, that needs to be figured out. There's a million more questions that all need to be figured out by the group that commits to the why. So, and let's be realistic, depending on how many people sign up to this why, it's possible that we won't be able to afford our pastors' salaries. Ed and Michelle understand this, and they know they may need to tent make, that is, have a secondary income to support their family. Tent making, oddly enough, is very aligned with a missional, incarnational type church's operation. It really complements it. So I've presented missional, incarnational quite imperfectly and very briefly. Over the coming weeks, Ed and Michelle are going to provide much more for us on Sunday mornings. What does it really mean? What might it look like? What are examples of other missional, incarnational churches elsewhere? What do they look like? How do they operate? Doesn't mean that's how we have to, but give me a picture. So stay tuned for that. I think it's going to be an exciting month as we figure that out together. I'm going to go with that's all for now. Probably have lots of questions, and that's good, and let's address them. So like I said, there's copies of my notes. You can have those when you go. We can also email them out to anybody who wants them. Help Andre with emails. I invite everybody to do that. Or the Lantern Executive email address, and we'll send you a copy. Like I said, we're videoing it, so we'll post that to YouTube. I think we have the technology to do that, and we'll get you a link for that. So yeah, let's hold off on judgment statements. I've asked you to absorb a huge amount. Hours and hours and hours of exec meetings are all condensed in a very brief little chat. So yeah, maybe your brain is full. So what we'll do is we'll chat for a bit. We do need, so business of the meeting, we do need to vote on the 6-month budget, and maybe now it's clear why we didn't want to put a full year budget out there. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it's going to take us time to reorganize, so it still makes sense to have some sort of budget, some sort of mandate to operate under. So we're going to ask you to ratify, as it were, the budget, that 6-month budget that's in front of you, but maybe let's do some questions first. Yes,
I'm a little confused. We're going to have this event
in a month.
Yes.
Is the executive structuring opportunities for discussion in between?
Would you like structured opportunities for discussion?
I guess it's not clear to me how that's going to happen.
So the vision at this point is we were inviting your feedback as individuals, but if you want to have, I would call focus groups or structured opportunities, we can do that if that's what people want. It's for you. You tell us what you want and we'll make it happen. Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. I think that's so important, and whether that's organized by exec or someone else, I don't know what other people are feeling, but for the last 6 months, I've been feeling a lot of distress and grief coming to church and feeling like there's this elephant, and this is the first time we've actually, as a congregation, as a community, said it out loud. And so maybe I'm the only person feeling really huge amounts of emotion, and to have to make a decision and think about a new vision when I'm just reeling from all the emotions over the past year or whatever of saying goodbye to so many people leaving. I know I'm not supposed to give feedback, but I don't know how to word it in a question, and yeah, I feel like I need that talk to everybody as a community and be able to, check in and just go through the feelings that we are going through with a dying church.
Okay. Okay, fair.
Can I make a suggestion that we just say like that, first off, that people get a chance to just say, everybody knows everybody here, connect with the other people, but also maybe say after church every Sunday from now until then, we have some time to come downstairs. People who want to talk about it, come downstairs, or make sure that you make those connections after church that we're talking about this stuff. And then making sure that the feedback comes back to you, the executive, because that's because I do think that a month from now is very quick.
Okay.
I just want to build on what Brian and what's been said so far. I think that's a great idea. So I think as exec, we will do that. And what I'd like to see us do is actually split into 3 groups, because it's really hard to talk when you have this many people. And perhaps each one of, perhaps Mike and Ryan and myself, we facilitate each one of those groups.
So you mean split right now into 3 groups?
No, over the next few weeks.
Like after church on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just plan on for the next month after church on Sundays that people get together and talk.
I think that's a good idea. I think the other piece is, I know there's probably a lot of other people feeling like Jen is feeling, and maybe other feelings, and sending an email to exec may not always give you the space you need to say what you need to say in the way you need to say it. So if you need, you can have my cell phone number, you can phone me, except during the day when I'm working, and you can't phone me. And talk to me if you want. I can't speak for Ryan or Mike, or I can leave my personal email and you can email me directly as well. I'm okay with that. Okay.
So I just really quickly want to speak to something that Jenny mentioned. I don't believe the Lantern is a dying church. What I see us doing is trying to get in front of something that doesn't need to happen. And my fear is if we do nothing, then bad things very easily could happen, that the Lantern could, do something. And so not wanting the Lantern to go to a place it doesn't need to, the exec wants to get in front of that and say, God has an awesome vision for the Lantern. If God didn't have an awesome vision for the Lantern, and I hate to do this to you, buddy, but why would Andre be dropped into us out of nowhere? There's story after story of God-sized things that have happened over the last year. God has plans and desires for the Lantern, and we want to make sure that the Lantern can continue to be the church He wants it to be. And we've got to speak plainly to each other and figure out what that is. So, anyways, Yes, go ahead.
I was just two questions. I'm just wondering, is there a way that this is going to be documented, like our opinions and our input, and so that we're able to view what other members, because if I just come to Michelle or Ed or you and tell you how I feel, which that's nice, but is there any way that we can see a collaboration of people's opinions and stuff, like,
Okay.
just to see if this really is a group decision? Or
Could some of those, like the emails, we could say like this is personal, so this is only to the executive, or we could say this is a public email, so this is something that we can put onto a forum that it's like, hey, Brian said this, right? And so, and that's, but Brian said it was okay for us to like just check off public or private when it's sent to, so that, because that is important, because I want to hear what Jen has to say about it, I want to hear what other people have to say about it.
Yeah,
one more thing.
I like it. So what I want to do is just write a couple things down. So what we've talked about is we want to have a way to document the discussions. And what we've also talked about is having sort of after every Sunday get-togethers and do the small group sort of discussion through it.
Yeah, sorry, Mike, I had one more thing.
Go ahead.
Also, like, I might just be confused because it's been a long time since I read a budget. But, so this, just so that we're being totally transparent, it looks like it's indicating that in 2018, we're expecting our offerings to go up. Is that because there's going to be a fee to join the Lantern or some financial?
So the way that the budget is put together, and no, this is a totally fair question.
Yeah.
Don't feel bad asking it, please.
Yeah.
The way the budget is put together is we say, okay, what are all the costs
Yeah.
of running the church, the salaries, the fixing our boiler, and all that stuff. And then our ministries, and what are those ministries envision doing? We take all those costs, and we say, okay, what's our incomes? And some of that is rental and all that. And then we say, okay, what's left? Well, I guess that comes in from tithes. So that line balances the budget. And so really, the congregation in saying, yeah, to that budget, they're looking at that and saying, okay, last year we gave however much it was, next year it's 10% more, so unless we grow by 10%, that means we're all given 10% more. That's how that budget balancing exercise works.
I think it's really important, and I want to honor what Jenny said and not discount what you said, Mike, is that it's important from today forward, or perhaps on the 11th forward, to start sort of from ground zero and move forward, to try and lay things to rest and move forward if we're going to have people make a commitment to something new. But I really do feel that the emotion part of it needs to be addressed really, really importantly. It isn't that we want to say that we're not making a good choice now, that we're going to be preventative or proactive, as you just responded. But that doesn't address the fact that people have, lost the people they rubbed shoulders with for years, that did ministry with for years, that made commitments for years, that no longer get to chat with on Sunday morning for years. There is a sense of grief about that. And maybe not, although I don't want to discount what Jenny said, but maybe not, the church is not dying, but our understanding of how we have done church together has died. I think we need to honor that. And we need to be able to say that, and we need to be able to say to one another, that hurts. That really hurts. It's painful, or it makes me angry, or whatever. I don't think that in choosing a good choice to move forward, we should discount anything that's gone in the past. And I know that you guys have the exact, all five of you, and Lane, as he's come on, have wrestled, maybe even had tears together, and really laid it out on the line. And so having these opportunities to talk, and maybe even talk to Jerry, who has some expertise in helping people move through those processes, is necessary. We can't start something new without grieving what's gone before. And so I think that that's a really key step in order for us to move positively forward is to acknowledge that what we have had in the past is gone. Not that there are tentacles and threads that are still very active and working, but, and for lots of people, maybe even the vision that they understood they signed up for is gone. And so even if they're looking forward to making a choice, am I going to sign up or am I going to go, there's also grieving that needs to happen with that. So to be able to honestly express how that feels is just as important as it is to say, how are we going to logistically and all of the other steps. So I want to honor, and I know you're not discounting by what you said, but I want to honor what Jenny said and make sure that we all feel that we have an open place to, without judgment or being critical, to say how this makes me feel and how I felt over the last year. And then we can have a catharsis and grieve and move forward in a way that it has properly and acknowledged the past. And again, there's parts of, because you talked about it a little bit, and this is going over into feedback. I'm like Jenny, I'm not quite sure how to separate the two, but in order to make, in order to understand how we can take what we have and move forward, I think that's not only the pastors, but it's the individual people that are here and how they have sown what they've sown into this place. Enough said, but just we need to honor the feelings and grief.
I agree, yes, 100%. We've got a few hands up. Honor, I think you go first.
Listening to this, it strikes me, first of all, that your March date is way too soon. So I'm just going to put that out there as a professional facilitator. You need more time.
Okay.
And secondly, I can think of some really effective, thoughtful ways that we can do this grieving in a way that's not uncomfortable for people, using good sound facilitation techniques. I can think of ways that we can start to reconsider a vision and ultimately be in a much better place to make a decision about whether we stay or go. But I think you need more than a month to do that, and I'm also offering to help the executive with some ideas.
Sarah.
Yeah, I just want to add a cap if I can, or like an extension on to what everyone else is saying. Like, I feel like the key word for me is processing. Like, I think executive has had a year to process this, and as a body, I don't know that we've necessarily had the same opportunity. And I, for one, my processing doesn't take place like personally. I need to hear like what other people are also feeling. Like, I feel like it's really reciprocal, and I feel like our body needs to be together with itself to have that full body processing. I don't know if I could feel like if I just send an email, then I'm just in a vacuum by myself. Do you know what I mean? I'm sorry, I know I have no question either.
No, I think it's good feedback, and I look forward to figuring out what to do with the. I think we have a great plan with maybe meeting after Sundays and having conversations then. Exec can revisit the March 11th date, whether that's too soon or not. If folks want more time, there's no way we want to ramrod anything through.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried that the decision has already been made. Is that kind of what I'm hearing? And basically our feedback is just us venting.
So, and I want to make, go ahead, Jerry.
And I think it's a really good point, right? We've kind of hashed through those things and said, we think this is the best choice, right? But at the same time, we don't want to say, okay, we're ramrodding this through, because to be honest, there's only 5 of us, and I know myself, I don't have time to do all of the things that we've done, so I don't want to be the church, right? So I think as part of the discussion, we are going to look at that more closely. I'm presuming that people are even here because we don't want to shut down the church. We don't want to join the other church. We want to remain as a body. And so I think it's important as we discuss and grieve and do all of those pieces, we also talk about does what we've come up with, like Mike said, if we get more feedback that's better than what we've come up with, we want to hear that and we want to work with you. Like for myself, and I can't speak for Mike or Ryan or Ed or Michelle, but for myself, I don't want to do this journey by myself, and even though the 5 of us have come up with an idea, if the rest of you aren't in line with it, I'm not doing it by myself. So does that answer your question?
I would echo what Jerry says. I know it probably seems like that. We've had a really hard emotional process through all of this, and it may be difficult to ascertain, but we have 3-hour-long emotionally fed meetings, and we don't have clear visions after that about what the next step is. And so we schedule a meeting for 2, maybe 3 weeks, and so these things get drawn out. And you know, we landed on what we thought was, what we think is a clear vision, but we're also realizing now, and as many of you are rightfully saying, this is the first time we're acknowledging this, we're coming up for air realizing that too. And so we have a recommendation about what we think is the best path forward, but we're realizing now, I think all of us, and we've said this explicitly in our meetings, we haven't received feedback from you at all. You're right. I mean, some of these things seem so obvious now as you're hearing about it, but a month is, we've had 4 months to chew on this, maybe even longer. Giving you a month seems insufficient. So to say that we have any sort of clear path forward, we have recommendations, but I think we can be persuaded if you know, people feel differently. And we do want to be informed and led by how you guys feel. And so I can say from my perspective, I don't have a clear-cut vision about where we're going through with this. We're here to present this for you, and if you have different opinions or the collective body feels differently at the end of this process, I think we can be moved by it.
So, Pascal?
You went through the 3 options that were kind of off the table, or obviously not your recommendations, and then you have the 4th, which is, call it the Lantern 2.0. Well, there's not a lot of goalposts around what that 2.0 is, right? So, and I'm going to say this, but it sounds wrong when I say it. It sounds like we don't like these 2 options, so this is what we're going to do, with not a lot of definition of what that's going to be. And that's not what I mean. So if I'm looking at, well, what is that 2.0 really? Because you want us to sign up, and I agree with that. But you know, I'm going to go, well, what am I signing up for?
Well, and so agreed. And the plan is not to spend a couple hours talking about what a missional incarnational church exactly is today. It's to spend those hours over the coming weeks to allow you to hear and then go away and respond and then hear and then go away and to allow you to chew on that vision over.
So you guys, so Exec has an idea of what that should look like.
We have ideas of what it might unfold like, yes, but really it's not Exec's. If people want to sign up for the vision, how that actually materializes isn't Exec's job. Isn't to figure that out. Well, this is how we're going to do Sunday school. Like that's all of us together got to figure that out.
Yep.
So two quick questions about that. Is one, as it stands right now, sorry, I think I heard you say this at the beginning. As it stands right now, the executive is the one, or are the ones that actually are the ones that vote and decide this is what's going to happen with the church. Which is,
I wish it wasn't, but that's the way we've organized. Yeah. So it is the way it is.
So that would be something to look at for the reincarnation of the is to say that if people don't like that, I didn't even mean if people don't like that part of it, that is something to sign up for. Secondly, is this vision idea, is this what is going to be the teachings for the next month while we're talking about it? Because how are we going to know what some of those visions are unless the pastors on Sunday morning are going to be talking
Ed, you want to talk to that?
Yeah, what worried me about this meeting the most is that people would feel alone and lonely leaving the place. And I think we're hearing a little bit of that. I love Brian's idea of getting together as often as we can to maybe not March, April, or whatever. I think that's important. In terms of Sunday morning, I would, because I would recommend this, that we're into this series, God in the Movies, which is been moved a couple of times. What if we still did worship service like we were planning, and then Brian's idea of coming down here for the people who want, have a 10-minute presentation on what incarnational, what this could look like, and then have discussions for an hour around that, or about the other options too. We've recommended one, but maybe it's a synthesis of the other ones too. I think we did the best we could as an exec to lay something out there. Not in concrete, but say, okay, let's talk about this now. I don't know if we want to do that on Sunday morning worship service, but maybe afterwards a 10-minute presentation and then a discussion after. That's one idea.
I think it needs to be clarified though too, is that as it stands right now, the way that the church is structured, the choice that the executive made, I don't think you guys need to backpedal at all. Like moving it back a little bit would be great, because a lot of us are feeling shocked. Like I knew there was something coming, and I think probably lots of people knew there was something coming, but I was like, are we breaking up? What's going on, right? Okay, now, oh, okay, this is where we're at, okay. But, so it's a little bit shorter timeline, but as it stands right now as a church, the way our church is structured, the pastors and the executive make the decision. If that's the decision they made, that's the decision that was made. We can talk about stuff, but that was the decision that was made as the way it's structured. Now, if we want to talk about in the future restructuring the way that is, then great, that can be the 2.0.
But I think how they came to that decision is important too, right?
Right, but it's the way it is structured right now. This is the decision that was made.
Brian, I just want to spin that a little. I don't think that we felt like we made a decision.
No.
I feel like we've made a recommendation about what the best path forward is, given the information we've had at our hand, given the five of us sitting in a room hashing this out. We want to bring this to you to be influenced or to be affirmed that we are taking the right path forward. So to call this a decision made, I don't think it doesn't resonate in my heart, because I don't feel like that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean as the decision made, but it's like this is the people who make the decisions for us.
So, Marty, just 2 seconds before you do that, I just want to, so we have our friends coming in here very shortly, and unfortunately that is going to truncate things a little bit, so let's chat for a bit more. But unfortunately we are going to be able to go on, and maybe that's healthy too. But so Marty, Randy, whoever's first.
Oh, well, she's
I'm
my
looking
wife,
at,
so
I just
go
have
ahead.
one.
Go ahead. You. All right, quick. I just want to say that thanks, Brian, for offering that up. I agree totally with what Brian said. But to say that you haven't made a decision and that you've made recommendations is great, but at the same time, to stay where we are, not an option. Yeah. Right? So that option, one option, which is keep going on status quo, that's not an option.
You're right, we did make that decision.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make a recommendation. I think that the timing of this is providential. I think Lent is coming up, starting Ash Wednesday is starting. And I think without protection from the Holy Spirit and without coverage of prayer, there's potential for the enemy to get in and cause things to fall apart. And I refuse to let that happen, because God has made a foundation here in Inglewood, which is amazing and beautiful. So I'm asking the Lanternites to commit to praying for this next 40 days daily for the future of the Lanterns.
I agree with Brandy. You said this, Mike, earlier, that there are so many things that have already been happening in the last year that have led us to this place. And for a lot of people, they may all seem negative, but they are not all negative. There are things that have happened and fallen into place that have brought us to this day, because God has brought us to this day. He has walked with us to this day. He did not desert us somewhere along the path, and we're all here alone. He is here. He is walking with us. he gave us Jerry, who can help us through this transitional transformation of page we're on as a member of executive. Someone who knows how to walk us through the emotion of this. He gave us Mike, who knows how to manage and chair and carry us forward through these meetings. He's given us Ryan, who has insight into both ends of those, as well as a very precise mind. He is here, he has been walking with us, he will continue to. And the fact that this discussion is happening at the very beginning of Lent is not a coincidence. Like, let's look at that big picture. What is Lent and where are we? We are about to enter a season in the church calendar that is all about death and then rebirth. And the timing, shake your heads, this is not a coincidence. Let's all get on board with that and say, thank you, God. We are going to walk with you through this. Jeff and I have been through, and some of you may never have had this experience. We have gone through a church that ended in a very painful, very nasty, ugly event. Okay? That was an ugly church death experience, not something you were here. We have gone through a church that went quietly into that dark night, a separate church that went, no, we're not going to. Very much like this place we are in right now, with a different church, saying we are not looking at the opportunity of transformation and moving forward. God has not called us to that. There are not resources and people and whatever God was saying. It's time to move past and into complete diversification. That group of people went into so many different churches that lit up and bloomed and grew things in different churches that when we look back now, it's like, no doubt, God sent that little church into 24 different churches to grow complete different things. So let me tell you that us all being here right now is a beautiful, healthy, God inhabiting experience that you are going through. It is not the ugly church, nasty death. It is not necessarily God saying, yeah, let go, move on, but let's look at that. So I want to encourage you to know that this is not like all as terrible as it may seem right now, that I truly have faith and believe right now in this moment that God is here and has put things in place and resources and people in place to walk us through this, whatever the outcome is for all of us as individuals. So take heart. Hear what Brandy's saying. Get on your knees and take all the feelings, all the feels, all the thoughts, all the faith, all the trust that God is big and full of love for all of us in this church and this community, and pray through it for the next 40 days if that's the timeline. But don't give up and don't go there. God is here and He's good. Well, get off my soapbox now.
Sorry. So let's, I just say one thing. Yep. Jenny, thanks. I think there's a number of people who've left that has affected some of us more than others. We need to pay attention to that. Brian, I'm really glad we said about the decision piece because there was conversations that I overheard that had more of a plan. This is where we're going, and I think your leadership wisely rejected that. To say we need to figure it out together. You're still here. One thing that I think hasn't been reflected from the conversations that I heard was your leadership was very wanted to really care for those who felt stuck here, who felt that maybe they couldn't leave because we were wondering what we were doing, and wanted to make sure that people knew that they had freedom if they needed to go. And so, although I think you guys have got some wrestling to do with your timeline, about what God wants us to do with that, I think you all need to know that that was a big consideration. That if there's folks here who are feeling like they can't leave because we're dying, I hope you're hearing a local initiative. I don't think
go, if they don't, but that you have more freedom after this conversation, if that's where you're at. They would want to hear from you about that.
So practically, in terms of how we go on, shall we be praying individually like crazy, but then coming together after worship service and discussing, going home prayer? So we need both. We need individual prayer. We need each other. We need community. We need discussion. Otherwise, we become alone in our own little.
I think I want to step in your shoes. I think I heard a couple things going forward that we really need to address. One, we need, as executive, we need to readjust that timeline or scrap a timeline altogether. I think that seems to be unanimous and it seems wise, and I think we need to adapt that. Two, we also need some sort of forum, and I'm sorry, your name. And Jerry, we need some sort of forum where people can come together and feel supported in this walk, in this decision-making process. And so we have to figure out the best forum for that. And I think as an executive, maybe what we can commit to you guys at this point in time is that we will try to put that together as soon as possible to present to you. And if there are major problems with what we propose, please feel free. We welcome feedback, but we need to get those two things on board as soon as possible, it seems like.
But for now, let's, like Ed says, let's pray individually. Let's get together collectively. I think we can say we're going to get together after churches on Sundays, and we'll get back to you on the rest of the details. I took a bunch of notes, and so Zach's going to wrestle with that, whether it be timeline or all that kind of stuff.
Can I ask one thing? I'm sure, and I totally have confidence in our leadership, that it's not, when you make decisions, when you go through this, it's in prayer. Right? So there's perhaps things that exec has knowledge of that led you to their recommendation. And you kind of mentioned about it, if God didn't want us here, why would Andre be? Perhaps some of those good news stories on this column, maybe we need to hear about them. You know, this is why we think God is leading us in this way. Yes, there's all the rational thinking to that, but here's the God moments that we see.
Yep.
I would love to hear those.
Okay. Okay, we will continue to share those and share those more and share those frequently. Andre, and then we're going to, unfortunately guys, we're going to have to cut it off and sneak out very quietly.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, for a very brief time, well actually a few years, I was a CPA instructor. And I would tell some of my CPA students who are hoping to get their CPA designation, CPA, Chartered Professional Accountant, is a professional accounting designation. However, CPA are just letters. It's what you bring to that designation that makes it worthwhile. So if I can use a symbol here, a church is all of us individually and all our talents bring into a church. We all have our different talents, but when we combine them, we're greater as a church than the individual members. Do you know what I'm trying to say? It's like we all have something to contribute. And all of us can contribute something really valuable and make it a really positive impact. Whether we're just like maybe 10 just starting out or we're 100 or 1,000. That's all I want to say.
Thanks. So let me just wrap this up really quickly in prayer, and then everybody is free to go. If you can help us out, that'd be great. Oh, yes, sorry. I knew I'd forget that. Okay, so we have the 6-month budget on the table, and so that is the plan until we have a new plan. If everybody is in favor of continuing with that plan until we have a new plan, please raise your hand. Okay. Motion has passed in the informality that is the language. Okay, God, we thank you for this morning. We thank you that you brought us here. We ask that you would preserve us. That as we wrestle with the emotions, with the new information, with the confusion, God, that you would guide us, that you would be present, and that we would, as a church, as a body, as individuals too, that we would come to a greater understanding of your desire for the world. Thank you for this time, God. Thank you for these people. Thank you that this was a great meeting. That was such a blessing. In your name, amen.